Sergeant David Hawk Henderson had always preferred the quiet of his job. Stationed at a remote security command post, SCP, on a military base in Colorado, his days were usually spent monitoring surveillance footage, making routine checks, and making sure that the perimeter remained secure. In his line of work, there was no room for mistakes. Every shift could be the one where something went wrong, and Hawk took pride in the fact that he never let anything slip past him. It was a crisp Saturday afternoon when the trouble began. Hawk was seated in the security shack, sipping coffee and scrolling through reports. The wind howled outside, and the sound of tires crunching on the gravel road was a familiar, comforting rhythm. But that was before he heard the deep roar of engines approaching. At first, he thought it was just another vehicle passing through. Maybe a trucker or a civilian on a scenic drive. But the sound grew louder, closer, until Hawk could clearly make out the unmistakable growl of multiple motorcycles. His eyes snapped to the monitor. The camera feed from the main gate displayed 5 motorcycles. They were big, chrome-heavy bikes, each one ridden by a man in a black leather jacket adorned with patches. Hawk recognized the patches immediately. The Black Vultures, a notorious biker gang that had caused trouble in nearby towns, though they usually stayed out of the military zones. Hawk's fingers hovered over the radio. He hadn't expected them to be bold enough to approach the base, but here they were. He didn't hesitate. With a calm voice, he called it in. "Control, this is Hawk. We've got a group of bikers heading toward the gate. No clearance, no prior authorization. Requesting instructions." "Roger that, Hawk. Stand by. We'll get back to you in a moment," came the response. Hawk was used to waiting, but there was something about the bikers' slow approach that felt off. They weren't just passing through, they were making a statement. The motorcycles pulled up to the security gate and idled, engines revving louder than necessary. The leader of the group, a tall, broad man with a rough beard and a tattoo of a vulture on his neck, stepped off his bike first. He walked toward the gate, his boots pounding against the gravel with each step. Hawk adjusted his position, watching from the small shack. He could tell these guys weren't just here to chat. This wasn't a wrong-turn situation. They knew exactly where they were, and Hawk knew exactly how this was going to play out. The leader reached the gate and stopped just short of the entry point. He lit a cigarette, his eyes scanning the area, clearly sizing up the situation. "You the guy in charge here?" The leader's voice was rough, like gravel dragged through a sandpaper machine. Hawk stood up, his military training kicking in. He squared his shoulders, stepping forward to the chain-link fence that separated the bikers from the base. "I'm the guy in charge of making sure you don't get through that gate without proper clearance," Hawk replied, his voice steady but authoritative. The biker snorted, clearly unfazed. "I don't think you understand, soldier. We just want to take a look around. No harm. Just a few bikes, some drinks, and then we're out of here." He took a drag from his cigarette and exhaled slowly, the smoke curling in the cold air. Hawk's expression remained impassive. "This is a military base, not a place for you to look around. You're trespassing, and I don't take kindly to that. Turn around and leave." The leader grinned, his eyes narrowing. "You really think you can stop us? There's 5 of us and 1 of you. What's it gonna be, soldier?" He flicked the cigarette butt to the ground and crushed it under his boot. "Hut." His hand slowly moved to the radio on his belt. "Control, this is Hawk. I need backup, now." "We've got a group of bikers here refusing to leave," as he spoke. The other bikers dismounted, and one of them, a younger, wiry guy, stepped forward, his hands clenched into fists. "You think you're tough? You're just some base rat who spends his days staring at cameras." The insults didn't faze Hawk. He'd heard worse in his years of service. What he didn't appreciate was the challenge. He wasn't some scared rookie. This was his turf, and he wasn't about to let a gang of troublemakers disrespect him or the security of the base. He glanced to the side, checking the perimeter. The sound of approaching military vehicles broke the tense silence. The MPs were on their way. The biker leader's grin faltered slightly as he saw the flashing lights in the distance. He tried to hide his nervousness but failed. All right. We'll head out, he muttered, his voice losing its earlier bravado. Hawk took a step back, maintaining his calm composure. Good choice, he said, his voice quiet but cutting. But next time, you won't be getting off so easily. Understand? The bikers exchanged uncomfortable glances. The young guy who had stepped forward earlier mumbled something under his breath, but the leader held up his hand, signaling for him to get back on his bike. They didn't argue further. One by one, the bikers climbed onto their motorcycles, revved their engines, and slowly turned around, heading back toward the road they came from. As the last of them disappeared from view, Hawk exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. The backup arrived just as the bikers were pulling away. The MPs rolled in, their vehicles heavy with authority. Hawk gave them a brief report, then watched them drive off to continue their patrol. As the sun dipped behind the mountains and the air grew colder, Hawk returned to the command post. It was another quiet night. Another job well done. But as he sat back down and resumed his watch, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the last time the Black Vultures would try to test him. And next time, they wouldn't get off so easy. After all, Sergeant David Hawk Henderson wasn't just any soldier, he was the one who stood between trouble and the security of the base. And no one messed with his watch.